I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dream some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful land of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives, from our individual relationships to our more serious, intimate relationships, to our family affairs, our community affairs, our national affairs, even international affairs, business affairs. No aspect of our life isn't touched by this problem. And it's a problem that I wish I could say we're getting a heck of a lot better. And it's a problem that I've spent my professional career writing about and talking about. Writing about in my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People, the international bestseller and recognized definitive book pretty much on the topic of interpersonal manipulation, and then my book, Character Disturbance, The Phenomenon of Our Age, your handbook for understanding all the disturbed and disordered characters in your life, and especially what to do when you need help, what kind of help to look for that will do some good when you go seeking for that help. And then my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, about how genuine faith can truly help transform a person's life. And my book with Dr. Kathy Armerstead, How Did We End Up Here? The Survivor's Guide to this character-disordered world of ours, the toxic relationship partner's guide to surviving and thriving in this character-disordered world of ours. And not only have I written about these things in my books, and will be also in my forthcoming book, The 10 Commandments of Character, which I'll tell you more about later. But I've given workshops across the country to professionals and lay people alike. You'll read about professional workshops starting again in June of this year, targeting the Philadelphia area and Dallas area first this coming June. And I'll have more to say about that. So you can go to my website, drgeorgesimon.com. That's www.drgeorgesimon.com. DRGEORGESIMON.com, or www.manipulative-people.com. That's manipulative-people.com. Either URL will take you to the same place, and you can find hundreds of timely articles on how to navigate your way through this character-disturbed world of ours, and how to understand the toxic folks in your life, all of the various folks, from narcissists to malignant narcissists to psychopaths, sociopaths, antisocials, you name it, they're all in there. And we are live tonight. We are live tonight, March the 11th, 2018. So if you want to join the conversation, you can call in at area code 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. If you want to ask a question, if you want to share a story that you think would interest the audience, maybe you just have something on your mind that you want to talk about. Maybe you've read one of the articles, or there's something that you've read in one of the books. In any case, if you want to be a part of the program tonight, we are live tonight, March the 11th, 2018, and you can call in at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. Well, for those of you who are readers of the blog, you know that Friday I posted another article. By the way, Friday is almost always the day that there'll be a new weekly post from me, timely topics having to do with the disturbed characters among us. And Friday I posted an article that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight on I've been doing several articles actually on the topic of lying, but the article Friday was on the malignant narcissists and their patterns of lying. There have been so many things written about what has come to be called pathological lying. And I have several articles on the blog actually about this, and I discuss it at length in 3 of my books. But pathological lying is something that has perplexed researchers for years. And I mentioned in my blog post on Friday that the originator, the early researcher who coined the term psychopath, was particularly flummoxed by this pathological kind of lying. He noticed in certain individuals that he ended up labeling psychopathic. He noticed, and by the way, the word psychopath or psychopathic means literally disease of the mind. Psycho being the mind, and pathic, any kind of pathology, is basically a disease process. And this researcher, his name is Hervé Cleckley, and he wrote a landmark book that he called The Mask of Sanity. He noticed these individuals that he gave the label psychopath to be inveterate liars. And it was more than just the fact that they lied a lot or that they lied all of the time. What really perplexed him is that he was noticing that there were these people who seemed to lie even when it didn't make any sense. It seemed like they just couldn't stop lying. And so they lied even when the truth would suffice, where it would seem to be in someone's best interest to tell the truth. And he couldn't figure this out. He thought that this kind of lying was so irrational that by definition, the irrationality of this kind of lying indicated some kind of insanity. After all, only insane people, only people whose brains are not working correctly, are irrational. So he actually thought that these psychopathic individuals, these extraordinarily manipulative individuals, were crazy. I see we have a call coming in, so we're going to go ahead and take it. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Take you off your topic, but I just had a question.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I still hear you on the radio. Shall I turn my volume
down?
Yeah,
yes, turn your radio down.
Okay, I'm sorry. All right, hold on 1 second.
So he actually thought...
Okay, I don't mean to take up too much time. I called last week, and I was bringing up the DNA subject, and made a lot of sense. But what I'm curious about is to what you really think about as far as... I was born in 1960, and when I grew up, there wasn't all this school shootings, there wasn't all this crazy pathology, whatever you want to call it,
right.
Behavior that's going on today. And I'm just curious, don't you think a lot of it has to do with just the culture and the change of culture? Because when we grew up, of course, if there's no internet, we all met down at the campfire, we drank a few beers, and played guitar and that kind of thing. It was all, I don't know, it was peaceful, but now it just seems like everything is so crazy. Like, I don't know what's going on anymore. Like, the whole country is just going insane.
Mm-hmm.
You get my drift. I don't know.
I do, and let me say, if you'll hang on for just a minute, because I want to follow up with a question for you, if you don't mind. Okay. I think you make a very interesting point. We have been in the age of character dysfunction for a few decades now. And what is different? We actually did have violence. I grew up in a city where there were gangs, and what I remember, the dominant weapon of choice was switchblades at the time. Well, guns were still purchasable. As a matter of fact, it was easier to purchase a gun then than it is now. However, this was different. Although people might be willing to even stab one another, the thought of a mass shooting or the thought of actually ending someone's life with a gun was even the furthest thing from the minds of thugs.
Exactly.
And,
I agree.
And so what has changed? And you do have to look at culture. And what the most insidious effect of the culture that has basically become entrenched over the last several decades is we have too many people among us who lack the internalized inhibition over their impulses to be able to weather disappointments, anger, hurt, whatever the case may be, without lashing out, without compunction, in extraordinary ways. People used to have some internal limits. I'll give you another example. This may seem...
It's childlike behavior.
This may seem a little naive to some, but there were even some words that people wouldn't let themselves say in mixed company. Today, we hear words that I used to have a great deal of hesitation uttering. We hear them dropped all the time without any compunction or reservation whatsoever. As a matter of fact, I hear the F-bomb drop so frequently, I wonder when people need to make impact, what's left to say? if somebody really wants to express an extraordinary amount of rage, what word is left?
Yeah.
You know.
I just think the internet was probably a great thing for society, but also a very bad thing.
Yeah.
I don't know. It seems to start like too many wars on social media. Yeah. You got, this gang, this group against that group, and it divides everybody.
Yeah. Well, the question I wanted to ask you, because I will expand on this just a little later, but the question I wanted to ask you is, seeing as though we agree that culture has had a detrimental effect on people's character formation and has, as for various reasons, left them without the internal controls to moderate their behavior, what is it about the culture of the past 3 or 4 decades that you see that has led to all of this?
Wow, that's a pretty heavy question, but I think it's just internal. I think that when I was born in 1960, when the time I was 10 years old, I think I just had a healthy respect for people in general. It's just the way everybody respected each other. We went to fairs, we went to different events, and everybody, it just seemed everybody respected each other. And then for some reason, all of a sudden, everybody just turned against each other, and that probably happened in the 90s. But I always remember a peaceful society where I grew up. I grew up in New Jersey in a small town, and everybody knew each other, and you didn't have to lock your doors, okay? That's how it was when I grew up.
Yeah. So, well,
but I don't know how to answer that question.
Well, I'm going to lend some my 2 cents to that. I think there are two things. One is a change in the level of permissiveness. This began in the 60s, and where we used to have some clear boundaries that you just simply didn't cross. It used to be clear how far you could go without adverse consequence. It's no longer clear how far you can go without adverse consequence. As a matter of fact, people today literally get away with murder. Our prisons are full of people who have taken another person's life and are back out on the street in the matter of years, depending on how young they were when they committed the crime, how outraged we were about the nature of the crime, under what circumstances it occurred. It's just unbelievable how the boundaries have eroded. So that relativism we've paid a price for. And the second thing, that permissiveness we've paid a price for. The other thing is moral relativism. There were certain things, certain basic things that we could all agree on that were simply either right or wrong. And with the questioning of the 60s, everything got questioned. And the result of that is we're no longer sure whether certain things that there used to be no question about, were they right or were they wrong, we're no longer sure. So that combination of... Go ahead.
I'm sorry. A good example is pornography. Back in 1950, you were lucky to get a Playboy magazine. Now you could just look on the internet and get all the porn you want.
And of any kind you want. Any level of deviancy you want. Exactly. Yeah. So that combination of both permissiveness and relativism has been deadly to character formation. And it's the exact opposite of what characterized some earlier eras and I write about this in my books. I write about the fact that psychology, as it was designed to help people, all the major theories were designed to help people who were basically too hung up and too riddled with guilt and shame and anxiety that was unreasonable based on the tough standards of the day. Whereas today's problems are rooted in the lack of conscience, in the lack of sufficient guilt and shame, and the people making a shipwreck of their own lives and the lives of everybody around them because they've lost all sense of self-control.
Very good.
Yeah.
You're the most intelligent man I think I ever listened to. Very good. I like that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And your check is in the mail.
I didn't mean to take you away from your topic.
That's quite all right. Well, actually, it's very, very much in line with my topic. So thanks for the call.
Okay, take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Actually, the call is very much in line with the topic because we're going to be talking about this great character defect of pathological lying and what's really behind it. And once again, if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326, and I'll be happy to take your call. Well, so I was mentioning earlier that the person who coined the term psychopath, which literally means a disease of the mind, he thought that these inveterate liars, these folks who we now call pathological liars, who lie not just often, repeatedly, but lie when it doesn't seem to make any sense. They lie when the truth would suffice. They lie even when the truth might actually serve them better. And this left Hervé Cleckley scratching his head. He kept saying, why would a person lie when the truth would suffice? Or why would a person lie when the truth might even serve them better? It didn't make any sense. It was so irrational that he thought it was a form of insanity. So he actually thought of the disorder that he labeled psychopathy to be a type of moral insanity. That's what he called it. And he really thought psychopaths were crazy. They're not crazy. There is method to their madness, and that's what I've written about in last Friday's post. There is a reason that inveterate pathological liars lie even when it would behoove them to tell the truth. And that is simply because they will not be had for who they are. They are so position conscious in their relationships that they never want to give up the position of advantage or what they perceive to be the position of advantage. So they are never going to let you have their number. They are never going to let you know who they really are or what they're really up to. It's not that they don't trust you. It's that they are determined to stay a step ahead of you and on top of you. All that matters, and I teach this in my workshops all across the country, all that matters is position, position, position at any time. They want to be on top and in control and have the position of advantage over you. That's the method to their madness. So if you don't know what they're up to, and if you don't know who they really are, if you're always second guessing, they stay a step ahead of you. It's just that simple. So there's method. It may not make sense to us because we see that in the long run, from a social standpoint, from a standpoint of getting along and prospering together and helping one another and cooperating and all that kind of stuff, we see an advantage to being more genuine and authentic and truthful and whatnot. So to us, maybe it doesn't make any sense, but to them, it's a perfectly rational behavior. It's all about you never really having their number. And I hate to get political about this, but there are certain examples that come to mind. I'll try to go on both ends of the political spectrum. Miss Clinton, certainly nobody's fool. But she also knew that there would be inevitably, whether or not there were any crooked dealings or not. I'm making no judgment about that, folks. I want to be sure that I don't offend folks here, because I'm not really trying to get political. Because really, folks, there's plenty of character disturbance on both sides of the political aisle, on both sides of the spectrum. Because we've lost character in everybody. But the point I'm trying to make is that she knew very well that were all of her emails to be on a federal server where FOI could get a hold of them, that there would inevitably be something on there, whether it was a crooked something or a perfectly legit something, that there would inevitably be something that somebody could find in that chain of emails that might be detrimental to her if it were known, might be detrimental in a run for the presidency. So it was to her advantage to be in complete control of that information and to have the capacity to completely erase what she never wanted to have public, and then to completely misrepresent the facts about it, about both her intention, because it's clear, I think, to anybody with half a brain what the intention was. And this is the kind of mentality we have. Now, I can think of examples on the other side, too. You know, we had a Republican president who gave us completely erroneous information about the necessity for creating an absolute mess in a part of the world that was already a mess. And that spawned even bigger problems with a backlash of extremists that now threaten the security of the entire world. Dishonesty always comes at a price. But people do it. People do it. And people with serious character disturbances do it particularly for tactical reasons. They have agendas that they want to serve. They have agendas that they want to serve. And they'll do whatever it is they think they have to do to serve those agendas and to fulfill them. So it's not a matter of me just calling out one side or the other. This character dysfunction that has characterized our society for the past several decades is a widespread phenomenon, and it affects both sides of the political spectrum. And I have to tell you, I maintain politically my independence very viciously. I am so ardent in my determination to be independent-minded, and I always vote the character issue. And it's tough. It's tough because I can always barely find someone to admire, at least to some degree. And I always end up picking the least of the evils that I see out there. It's character that's in very short commodity. It's honesty and integrity that is in such short supply. And that's why we're in the mess we're in. And I want to say something else about that, too. When I was talking to the caller earlier on, we were talking about the cultural contributions to this. And I pointed out that it is the relativism, the moral relativism, and the permissiveness, the erosion of generally accepted boundaries. That's the permissive part. And then the moral relativism, the loss of a sense of at least some basic things where there was just no doubt about what was right and wrong. With the permissiveness and the relativism that crept into our culture in the 60s and thereafter, character formation in our young folks has just been abominable. It's been abominable. And when the boomers grew up and took power, their lack of internalized controls showed up in spades. And then those folks had children, and they were even more permissive and relativistic with them. And now we have all sorts of folks, unfortunately, who grow up without an internalized set of boundaries, self-imposed boundaries where they say, you know what, I stop at this line. I don't cross that line. It would terrify me to cross that line. It would unnerve me so I wouldn't dare cross that line. It looked like we had a caller tried to call, and then the call dropped. So, caller, if you are trying to call, give us one more chance here. I'm not sure why it didn't go through, but it looks like we had a caller from Michigan just moments ago, and the call dropped. So, give us another call if you want to. And any of you who want to join the conversation at 501-258-8326. That's 501-258-8326. And I'll be happy to take your call. So what I was wanting to say earlier is that it isn't just that culture influences character development. It does. And as certain values and standards have dramatically changed for the worse in culture, we have more and more folks growing up with character deficiencies. And as more of those folks enter society, those values and standards erode even further. I got another caller on the line. Hello and welcome to Character Matters.
Dr. Simon, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you today?
I'm hanging in there. I'm going through that blah, blah thing that happens when you find out that you have that self-love deficit issue.
Uh-huh.
But I was very interested in your, I just today found out about your your interview with Meredith Miller.
Uh-huh.
On YouTube. I watched that, and I was, first of all, very, very proud of you, because one of your YouTube videos I had watched, you seemed not nearly as healthy as you look to me more currently, which I guess that was a 2016 video versus, yes. I don't know what year I was looking at before when you were describing personality disorders.
Yeah, that was about 8 years earlier when I was very unhealthy. Thank you.
Yeah, so very proud and inspired to see that. So thank you.
Thank you.
And also,
it was a long upward climb.
Yeah, as it seems as it should be, right? Or
yeah.
Maybe not should be, but is the way.
Yeah.
Well, first I wanted to touch on your previous caller and what you were talking about, moral relativism.
Yes.
I mean, since this happened, I'm an artist and a writer and a musician and an actress, and since this happened to me, I'm basically just throwing myself into learning about what has happened, and then kind of, philosophizing in my own words. Things are coming out, and previously to finding out that you had this radio show on tonight, I wrote something down called about "Do as I say, not as I do."
Uh-huh.
And a long time ago, I was still living in Colorado, and I wrote an article that I never did anything with, but it was very polished, and it was all about the baby boomers generation, and how I truly, as I guess you would consider me, what do they call an millennial?
Yes. Yes.
Somewhere before, I was born in 81.
Yeah,
okay?
somewhere between. Yes.
Somewhere between. Anyway, so I had this thought, probably back in, I guess it would have been 2012, that there was this whole epidemic of peace and love, and the musicians were talking about politics and behavior and character like you're describing.
Uh-huh.
And then I witnessed, I was a very intelligent child, and I was brought up Catholic, and I witnessed this entire, just do as I say, not as I do,
mm-hmm.
or as we did. And I'm angry, I'm irritated, and I have a lot of love in me, and I don't quite know what to do with all that right now. I'm doing my best, to be gracious, but I think we have, like you were saying, we have the problem in character, and nobody wants to talk about character. And I commend you for beginning to tear down these philosophical, psychological implements that have gone on, because, the person that I just had to get out of a relationship with convinced me that due to depression, she was exempt from all behavior.
Exactly.
Everything, that all the crazy making stuff.
Okay.
That I was not.
I am so glad you brought this up, and if I want you to stay on the line, because I'm going to try and explain something as best as I can. Here's how the commentators about that can be so right and so wrong at the same time. Let's take an example of really extreme depression. Depression in which there is morbid ideation, and that morbid ideation can be either great thoughts of harm to oneself or to others. That can happen in depression. But here's where the commentators are partly right, but they're also dead wrong. What's different is depression wasn't different 40 years ago. Depression was the same. People in very, very deep, drastic depressions had those thoughts and urges and impulses. The difference is they also had controls built into them where they didn't as frequently act on them. That's the difference. And that has to do with culture and character formation. And so that's how they can be right and so deadly wrong at the same time. Character matters. We used to know that. It matters more than anything. I call it our psychological immune system. It's what holds us together when everything's coming apart. When we're having the most horrendous emotional time of our lives and we have these ungodly thoughts. It's what keeps us from going over the edge. And we've forgotten how important it is. That's why I do this program. That's why I write my books. That's why I go traipsing all over the country, training professionals and other people. I sounded.
I might interrupt.
Well, I'm sorry?
But the only people reading them are the people that are getting done to.
Oh, no, that's not true. Oh, no, that's not. You would not believe it. You would not believe the amount of email I get. and the consultations I do on a weekly basis with people who have finally woken up and realized why not only their lives are still a shipwreck, but why they made a shipwreck out of so many other lives. And they have finally come to a point where they actually want to be a better person, and they haven't a clue how. And they
Wow.
You bet. I thought so too. I thought, I'm preaching to the choir with my books. That isn't true. It isn't true. People do wake up. Now, the sad truth is that people are waking up at, like 55, 60, 65 sometimes. But they are waking up. And when they do, the same material that I've written about and that I've spoken about for so many years resonates with them too. They say, you know what? I hate to admit it, but that was me. Now what the heck do I do?
Wow.
Yeah.
I've been struggling a lot with, okay, so I'm going to have to go cold turkey off my family and my girlfriend and all my friends that I've manifested because I got the shipwreck going on. And I've been trying to study and research and read other people's stories. And what I am starting to understand is most people, until they do that thing, like you say, when you look in the mirror, like I did, I stopped asking myself, wait, I just wrote this down, it was a good one. I stopped asking myself, what's wrong with me? My whole life I've been saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I stopped asking that, and I asked, what am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
Instead of, so what's wrong with me? It's my action, like you said, the behavior. It's what is my behavior? But I'm questioning, I guess, why can't I please, if I can get to the forgiveness and I love my family and I love these people so much, why can't I send them one of your books or something and say, see, this is what's going on? Because I'm learning if I do that, I'm just going to get confronted with a whole bunch of garbage that I don't need.
Are they people of any kind of faith?
Yes, I have both. I have both spectrums.
In the Judas Syndrome, I really tried to give every kind of situational example that I could think of. I scoured all my case files. I scoured all the emails, the tens of thousands that I've gotten over the years, stories told to me by people, all the comments and examples given to me at workshops over the years. I put it all together, and I tried to come up with as many scenarios that would resonate with people as possible to illustrate, to basically have almost anybody find some resonance in one of the stories. And so if they are people of any kind of faith, I would say that that book is going to touch somebody somehow, some way. And the other one would be character disturbance. But for sure, the Judas Syndrome.
But is there something to be said for I'm the one presenting the information? Should it be, anonymously found out by them or through them, or is it,
I really don't think it matters. There may be an initial defensive reaction, but frankly, if there's going to be anywhere near the minimum openness of heart to take in the material of the book, it isn't going to make that much difference anyway. So basically, I'm saying to you, what do you got to lose?
Right,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I did have another point, but I don't want to take up too much of
Well,
your
that's all
time.
right. Go ahead.
The psychopathic nature that you've been talking about?
Yes.
It was interesting to me that you opened with that because I had no idea what your topic of discussion was going to be tonight. And immediately I went back to, these two tapes that my mom made when we were little girls. Both myself and my sister are adopted.
Uh-huh.
We were adopted very, very young. I was 4 months old. My sister was 6 months old. Anyways, my mom, around the time when you're 1.5, 2 years old and you start talking, we had the old press play and record on this little jam box thing, and she stuck the tape in there. And on my tape, it's me going, I'm doing my ABCs. She's telling me, talking to the speaker, and I'm doing it. I'm all excited, and I finish, and I'm waiting. I think that in my little brain, I'm thinking there's lady in there that's going to say, good job, you know?
Yeah.
And when she didn't, I mean, when the invisible lady in the box didn't give me any validation, I got really sad. I was really hurt, and I was upset. And of course, because there's already initial trauma for me having separation anxiety from being an adopted kid.
Yeah.
It was strange, because as I'm putting all of this together, my mother proceeds to, instead of, figuring out that, she thinks there's somebody inside the box, and explain that to me, she tells me that, no, you want to talk into it, because when you're older, you want to be able to hear your voice and play it again back to yourself. And I don't understand what she's saying, obviously. Mm-hmm. But as the recording continues, you notice that I become a zombie, and I'm just repeating her, she's telling me to say this, say that. I think she asked me to sing, like another little nursery rhyme, and I kind of didn't want to. And then she wants me to tell her about what we did at Grandma's house. And you can hear my brain just shuts right off, and I start regurgitating. I'm repeating back what she says.
Right.
Interesting, right? I mean, I think on a really fundamental level.
Yeah, actually, what you're describing here is that we are innately relational creatures. In other words, when we express ourselves, when we're young and innocent, and we express ourselves, we are looking for that response from the other, because we're seeking that engagement, we're seeking that interactive bond. And you particularly, as an adopted child, would have been very sensitive to that. We have to be conditioned out of that. In other words, it is the natural order of things for us to be relational. We have to
we got proof.
Yeah. And you have to be conditioned out of that. And that's unfortunately the experience of too many folks these days. It is a tragedy. We think of it as a tragedy when somebody senselessly takes the life of somebody else on the street over $5 worth of drugs.
Right.
The real tragedy is that there are some folks who are so poorly emotionally bonded to another human being because they haven't had any kind of a decent relationship with anybody to bond with, that there are folks so devoid of a sense of relationship that they have absolutely no regard for a human life and could take it without compunction. That's the tragedy, and we're not even talking about it, let alone doing anything about it. We think...
And that's is that what happens in the psychopath's head?
That's what happens, and unfortunately, in the severe cases, in the cases of severe psychopathy, there is also a built-in deficit, a built-in empathy capacity deficit. And so when you put the two together, when you have a person who is already having trouble having room in their heart for empathy, and then you put them in a situation where there's no decent emotional bonding, you have a powder keg. You have a real mess on your hands. You have the makings of a cold-blooded predator on your hands.
This, I believe, is the case of my sister. But I have a very strange question for you, because I wanted to get to her tape. Okay, my mom pressed play and record, and I think my sister was just in the bathtub doing what a 1.5, 2-year-old does, playing around, blah, blah, splashing in the tub. And I kid you not, it sounds demonic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that a thing?
We know that in the cases of more severe psychopathy, that the empathy deficits are there right from the get-go. Now, Some people overinterpret the data. Some people say that all psychopaths are born and not made, and that there's just absolutely no hope. That is a misrepresentation of the data, but we do know that some individuals come empathy impaired to the table. There's something wrong in the brain's wiring right from the get-go. And I think I know what you mean. I've actually witnessed this about a dozen times in my professional career, where you just feel the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you know you're in the presence of somebody who not only looks but sounds and acts in that way that is best described only as evil. I've got another call I need to take. Thanks so much, okay?
Thank you for your time today.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for your help.
Bye-bye. Hello, and welcome to Character Matters.
Hi, how are you? I'm so happy I got through.
Yeah, you're the last caller of the day.
Okay, well, I'll make it quick. I just wanted to. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to stream successfully, so I'm not sure what the theme of the show was tonight.
We were talking about pathological lying and psychopathy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my question is quickly about entitlement.
Uh-huh.
I wanted to ask you. I just finished reading your book, and I got introduced to you.
Which one?
Character Matters.
Character Disturbance?
Character Disturbance, excuse me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been highlighting the heck out of it, and I've been forwarding it to friends and making them buy it. And so, I think that this is a really interesting topic, and I'm basically trying to, perhaps this is the wrong approach, but I'm basically trying to diagnose someone who I broke up with recently. After a 2-year relationship, I found out that he was having another relationship, actually a couple of others, but full relationships with other people. And I feel a little bit, I feel pretty duped. And I assume they were authentic. But my frustration is this what I'm seeing is sort of the theme of entitlement to other people's bodies. And that's sort of a frustrating. I don't know if it's because of online dating and the increase in this, but it just seems like people can live dual lives, and they can be deceptive, and they can feel as if they're entitled to people's bodies. And so this has become sort of thematic for me. So I just wanted to ask you about that. What your thoughts were. It's kind of made me feel like I'm on guard, but I don't necessarily know how to trust my own intuition anymore.
Right.
So this has become.
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. I'm going to do my best to answer it in the time that we have left. And I'm also going to suggest to you that you might also really enjoy How Did We End Up Here? Because the questions that you're asking about how do I trust my judgment in the future? How do I avoid some of the same pitfalls? How do I know whether somebody is nobody's perfect. How do I know that somebody's really meaning to change and all that kind of stuff? That's why Dr. Armistead and I wrote How Did We End Up Here? And it will answer a lot of those questions. But to get to your point of entitlement, the whole concept of a higher power, as the folks in the 12 Steps groups refer to their concept of God, because we don't have to get religious about this at all. We don't even have to get deistic about it. The whole concept of a higher power is foreign to a lot of folks these days. It's easy to talk about that. It's a lot more difficult to actually accept in the heart that there's something bigger than you and your own petty desires and wants and wishes. That there's a bigger picture, that there's something more important than you that is worth you basically turning yourself over to and serving a higher cause, a higher purpose. That's missing in so many folks' lives. And their sense of entitlement comes from a complete lack of gratitude for this absolute miracle of life and no regard whatsoever for the giver. However you see it, you don't have to see it. You don't even have to have a concept of some personal God that created it. That's not necessary. You could have even respect for the universe. You didn't have to be here. Life is a gift. And either you're going to honor that gift somehow with your life, or you're just going to take everything you can, feeling like it's owed to you, like you're entitled to it. And that's the problem. It's a spiritual problem, not a religious problem. You don't have to be religious. You don't even have to believe in a God. But you have to believe in something bigger than you, and you have to have a sense of indebtedness to that something bigger than you.
Wow. Well, moving words. Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for all the work you've done, because it's really helped me in this confusing time. I don't think I've ever dated anyone character disturbed. So this was a learning curve from me who I'm definitely on the neurotic spectrum.
And trust me, I think you're going to find How Did We End Up Here a really good handbook for the future for yourself too.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the call. Well, boy, how the time has flown tonight. But we actually did get it all covered. We got everything I wanted to get covered. And I thank you, listeners, I thank you, callers. Those of you who called in tonight, you really added to the program, as you always do. And I do believe that we will be back live again next Sunday. The 18th of March, 2018. I think we'll be live again, so I can take calls at 501-258-8326. And so it's time to wrap up another edition of Character Matters. I do want to urge you to go to my blog site at either www.drgeorgesimon.com. That's DRGEORGESIMON.com. Check out especially the consultations page, the books page, the America My Home page. Check out the page on the workshops. The schedule will be posted very soon for my workshops beginning in June. And I'll have information for you soon on my upcoming book, The 10 Commandments of Character. And then also avail yourself of my books, In Sheep's Clothing, Understanding and Dealing with Manipulative People. My book, Character Disturbance, which is the compendium of all the disturbed characters you're likely to encounter in your life, and especially what to look for, the way of help when you need it. The Judas Syndrome, my book, especially targeted to the Christian faith community, and then my book, How Did We End Up Here? The Relationship Partner's Guide to Surviving and Thriving in This Character-Disordered World of Ours. That, I want to thank you once again.
From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities.
Pictures on the tracks you can catch.